If you've been following the case of the Bladensburg Cross, or religious freedom in general, you may have rejoiced when this opinion was released by the Supreme Court this week. However, while the ends were correct, the logic behind the opinion was extremely flawed, well, at least for all but one of the justices. We'll discuss this next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Well, hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution and teach the rising generation to be free. I'm glad you could join me today. We're going to have an interesting discussion on the case of the Bladensburg Cross. Before that, please head over to the website constitutionstudy.com, where you can find out what we're doing here at the Constitution Study, keep track of all those things we're working on, follow me in the work that I'm doing, follow the book, follow the videos, follow the articles. Most of all, ask questions. I love when people ask questions, and I think we have a really good time when we go through and kind of analyze all of that. I also want to thank people who've helped me put this together, people like Mark and Carol Murphy, their band Rebel North, who let me use their music for the bumps. And for those of you who will be out and about, who see where I am, you can go to the website, see where I'll be speaking, see where I'll be presenting. Please stop by, say hello, shake my hand. I love the opportunity to shake yours, to learn more about what American patriots are doing, that to really read and study and understand the Constitution for themselves. So let's talk about the opinion regarding the Bladensburg Cross. Now, just as a brief review, the Bladensburg Cross was erected by citizens of Prince George's County and the American Legion as a memorial to the residents who died in World War I. Now, in 1961, the Maryland National Capital and Park Planning Commission took over the memorial, including its maintenance. And I'll put a link into an article I wrote about this particular case that goes into some more of the backstory. Now, in 2014, the American Humanist Society and others filed suit claiming that the memorial, being on public land and maintained with public funds, was a violation of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause. I discussed that in the other article. Now, in a split decision by the Supreme Court, the lower court order to remove the memorial was overturned. While there were some interesting reasons given, I believe only Justice Thomas actually made the most basic constitutional point. The First Amendment does not apply to the states. Justice Alito, who delivered the main opinion for the court, listed history and tradition as reasons the cross should be left. He was joined by Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Breyer, and Justice Kavanaugh in finding that the Lemon test, by which courts have determined Establishment Clause issues in the past, was unworkable and should no longer be used. The Lemon test basically said anything a reasonable observer would think is an establishment of religion was sufficient cause to sue someone. On a more interesting note, Justice Gorsuch, joined by Justice Thomas, noted that the case lacks standing. The idea that seeing something you find offensive is justification to sue is not supported by the law, not by the Constitution. So since the court now thinks that the Lemon test is, pardon the pun, a lemon, simply seeing something you disagree with does not give you standing to sue. While this seems quite obvious based on the free speech clause, it has taken the court almost 50 years to figure this out. Go figure. Only Justice Thomas recognized the obvious. The text and history of the clause, which reads, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion," suggests that it should not be incorporated against the states. When the court incorporated the clause in Everson versus Board of Education of Ewing, it apparently did not consider that an incorporated Establishment Clause would prohibit exactly what the text of the clause seeks to protect: state establishments of religion. Further confounding the incorporation question is the fact that the First Amendment, by its terms, applies only to laws enacted by Congress. I'll put another link in the notes about the selective incorporation doctrine. Now, as Justice Thomas pointed out, by applying the First Amendment to the states, the court had prohibited exactly what the Establishment Clause seeks to protect: the state's determination of public expressions of religion. By taking unto themselves the power to determine what religious expression could be allowed on public land, the court was establishing what religions could have exclusive access to that public square. In other words, establishing a religion. Furthermore, it was obvious to anyone who can read that the entire First Amendment applies only to laws enacted by Congress. Since the First Amendment specifically limits Congress, it does not apply to the states, therefore leaving the question of public religious displays to the state's own constitution. Now in dissent was Justice Ginsburg, joined by Justice Sotomayor. And in this dissent, the justices noted, quote, "Decades ago, this court recognized that the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to the Constitution demands government neutrality among religious faiths and between religion and non-religion." Okay, there's just one little problem, since that's not what the Constitution says. It says Congress shall make no law establishing a religion. Not only does that not require government neutrality, it requires the federal government to stay out of the way. And the free exercise clause means they need to stay out of the way of anyone who wishes to express their religion in public, as long as such expression does not infringe on legitimate rights of another. And no, seeing a religious symbol isn't an infringement on your right. Justice Ginsburg completely ignores the fact that the cross predates both the highway and the public organization that now maintains it. Justice Ginsburg expressed concern about the anguish, hardship, and bitter strife allowing such displays could lead to, coming from the case Engel versus Vitale in 1962. She completely ignores the anguish, hardship, and strife tearing down the cross would cause. And yes, the irony that the case that so restricts free expression happens to have my name on it is not lost on me. So the good news is the cross gets to stay. The bad news is 8 out of 9 justices still can't read basic English. So rejoice that freedom of religion was protected in America while you weep at the state of the judicial system. Whether done in ignorance or arrogance, until we hire representatives who will appoint and confirm judges who can actually read and apply the law rather than twist it to meet their agenda, our rights will be subject to the whims of 9 high priests in black robes that we call the Supreme Court. So what do you think of the case? Do you think we should take down monuments that contain religious symbols? Or do we leave it to the states the way the Constitution actually says? Which is a good question. Is Justice Thomas right? Are the states free from the restrictions of the First Amendment and bound only to their own constitutions where freedom of religion is concerned? Are there court cases out there you would like me to review, something you think we might find interesting? Well, do me a favor, place them in the comments below and I'll be happy to take a look. Most of all, I hope you've learned a little something about the Constitution, about the idea of freedom of religion, that we've gotten some background into this case, which has not been covered in the news. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll be back. Please head over to the website, like me on Facebook, follow, subscribe to me on YouTube. Help support and most of all spread the word of what we're doing here on the Constitution Study. And I hope to see you here next time. Have a great day.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long